Now, full disclosure, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just sharing my journey with you guys on how I got started investing into real estate and how you can do it too. I'm currently at 3 properties, going on a 4th, so I just want to make sure I put that out there. So with that being said, let's get going. Step number 1, it's the down payment. A lot of lenders will want you to put down anywhere from 15 to 20%. And to make the numbers easy, if we talk about a house that it's 100K, you're looking at anywhere from 15 to 20% as a down payment only. I know you may see a lot of ads from people that, preach starting real estate with no money down or starting real estate with 0 of your own money invested and things like that. While that can be true if you plan to fix and flip, or if you try to, let's say, wholesale or things like that, when we talk about a rental property, you're gonna have to end up using your own money. Like, there's no other way around it. Now, it is this little trick, as I like to call it, house hacking, where instead of putting 15 to 20% down, you can use an FHA loan. And an FHA loan, it's only required to put down 3.5%, but it's very tricky because technically you're not allowed to rent your place, to a tenant. However, what you can do is you can get a 2-unit, a duplex, a triplex, up to a 4-unit if this is your first time buying a property. Right? Let me repeat that. You can use an FHA loan, and I advise you talk to your lender, to your bank, whatever, and try to get a little more information about how this process works to see if you qualify and all that. But 3.5%, if you end up using it, you're only allowed to use this FHA loan once while you live in it. Now, let's say you buy this year an FHA loan house, or you buy a house using an FHA loan, you're required to live in it at least a year. And then if you decide to sell it, then you can, use it again. But you're not able to have 2 loans, at the same time using this FHA strategy, because it's a Federal Housing Administration type of loan. Therefore, they don't want people to take advantage of it, right? So technically, if you already have a house, the only other way to get your rental property would be to put down 15 to 20%. If you don't have a house, if you don't own a house yet, and you want to use this FHA loan, I actually strongly recommend to get at least a 2, 3, or even up to a 4-unit place. Of course, there are a lot of other things that you have to consider in terms of debt to income ratio, like how much money have you made the last 2 years, because you're not going to be able to, a 4-unit place, let's assume you get it anywhere from 500,000 to like up to $1 million or whatever, depending on the area. Like if I talk about Boston in Massachusetts, I'm not going to be able to get a 4-unit less than 1.3 if we're talking about in the city of Boston, right? You go around the city, further down in the suburbs and all that, yes, I may be able to get it much lower than that, but like right in the city of Boston, it's impossible, right? Now, depending on where you live, that may be different, right? Like you can probably, it all depends, right? Like if you can get a house, a 2-3 unit place for $200,000-$300,000, good for you. That way you can actually use that 3.5% and not have to pull a big chunk of cash to have to put down for that down payment, right? Step number 2, your credit score. So you have to work on your credit, and you have to build your credit to a point where, you are at least 720, 730, 740 ideally, right? You're not going to be able, if you have, a 600 credit score and you have a lot of late payments, or you don't have credit cards, or you just haven't been working on your credit score, you have to focus on that step first. Again, we're not talking about fix and flips, we're not talking about wholesaling and things like that. We're talking about your first rental property. Therefore, you as the owner, your credit score will play one of the most important roles in this whole scenario. Like when you're going to talk to your lender, and I remember I talked to my lender a year to a year and a half prior to purchasing it. Well, prior to start making offers, right? So he told me, look, dude, you're a business owner, right? I'm a business owner. So he told me, I need you to, first he asked me, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to purchase a rental property. And he said, cool, here are the options. Like you can use this FHA loan, you can use a regular conventional loan, and and then he asked me, what's your price range? What are you looking to put down? What areas you look for, and what do you need the house for, and things like that, right? So then I told him my scenarios and what I wanted to do, and he said, well, your best scenario would be a 2-unit, a duplex, where you can live in one place and then rent the second one, right? So it's very important to talk to your lender. And also, like, one of the first questions will be, what's your credit score like? So if your credit score is like 600 points, you're gonna have to work on that credit score first. So the way to do it is, number one, you need to make sure, like, if you have a limit of, let's say, $10,000 on one of your credit cards, every single month you need to make sure that you pay off at least $7,000. Like, if you spend it all, right? Like, let's say your limit is $10,000, you spend it all, you need to make sure that that $7,000 it's covered, like the 70-30%. You should never ever have more than 30% utilization of your credit score, right? So again, you can have multiple credit cards, and let's assume all of them total of $10,000. You cannot, every single month when the due date comes, you need to pay off at least 70% of that amount that you actually spent. Because you can have a limit of $10,000. If you only spend $2K, you're fine, right? Like, you can spend up to $3K and you just make the minimum due payment every single month, but you cannot go above that 30% because you're going to be considered a risky borrower, right? One of the sites that I recommend a lot is creditkarma.com, and you'll find the link in the description below. I don't get any affiliate commission, so there's nothing to worry about there. You can actually use it. It's completely free. And you can also use, like, most of the banks, you know, Chase, Bank of America, whatever bank account you have, you can also check your FICO score, and that's also free within the app. But Credit Karma allows you to see if you lack any of the, you know, if you have late payments, or if your credit score is low, they actually tell you what's the reason for that, so you can work on those things. So you want to make sure that you pay off every single month that credit card, and you want to keep it less than 30% utilization at the end of every single month, right? And then there are a couple other things that you can work on. So for example, if you have a car loan, make sure you pay, like, strictly. You're not allowed to miss, like, for example, maybe you can relate to this. I had it set up on autopay, but what happened, and since that time, I have an alert every single day at 9 p.m. to make sure I have an alert that rings me, and it tells me, make sure you check all your bank accounts, your credit cards, and all that. Because what happened was, I had it set up on autopay. One of my cards, I travel out of US, and one of my cards got flagged for fraud detection. Well, when that happened, of course, my card was blocked by the bank. Therefore, when the auto loan tried to run the payment, it didn't go through. They sent me an email, it went to spam. I didn't realize it only probably after like 3 weeks or so. So it went into a late payment. So what I had to do is actually I had to pay off the entire auto loan. So I tried to fight it a little bit, fight it with Volkswagen, because they were the ones that lent me the money for this car loan, but they said it was too late for them because they already reported it to the credit unions. So what I had to do is I tried to fight it, explain what happened. It didn't work. So I ended up paying the auto loan. And then once an account is closed, you can actually request that late payment to be taken off your score, because what happens is they're not supposed to leave it on if the account is closed, because it doesn't help them at all, right? If the account is closed, they don't have to still keep it on your score. So that's probably going to have to take some time if you are in one of those situations, but your credit score plays a big role for your first rental property. Step number 3, tax returns. So your tax returns play a big role into this process, and your lender will ask you for either your tax transcripts or just your tax reports, like the tax returns records, right? So your accountant, your CPA should have sent you those. So if you haven't filed your taxes, make sure you do that. They're gonna need, if not 3, most likely the previous 2 years of tax returns. They asked me for 3 because I'm a business owner. If you are employed at the same company for the last 2 years with no gap in between, you're fine as long as you have your tax returns filed. You either, ask your CPA to get it to you, or if not, you can just go on the IRS website, create an account, and then you can download your transcripts completely for free. But tax returns play a huge role, because what's gonna happen is they're gonna look at how much money you made for the last 2 years. So side note on this, when I call my lender about a year and a half of my first rental property, he told me, look, dude, based on the amount that you want to purchase the house, so my house was $450K, I'm going to need you to show me between this amount to this amount. So because I'm a business owner, I'm able to, control how much money I declare on taxes at the end of the year. Because a lot of times we think, hey, let's just bury a bunch of expenses into my tax returns so I don't have a tax liability that much. As a business owner, I'm always paying, right? If you're an employee, you probably get some money back. But me as a business owner, I'm always having to pay back the IRS, right? So I knew that, hey, I need to make sure that I show on my returns at least 100K or anywhere from 80 to 100K in profit, in net profit, to be able to afford to get this rental property and then potentially get another one, right? So your debt to income ratio plays a huge role, and that's going to be shown on your tax returns. So you need to plan ahead. That's why I'm going to explain in the next step number 4, talk to a lender and get pre-approved. So here's what I mean by that. Yes, it's very important to get pre-approved, to get a pre-approval letter for the amount that you're trying to buy a house for. However, I would advise you to talk to your lender a year, if not 2 years in advance, depending on how's your, tax return situation, depends on how's your credit score and a bunch of other things in between, because it's a simple process, but at the same time, it's fairly complex, right? Because again, there are a lot of moving pieces. Like you need the down payment, you're gonna need your credit score to be in line, you're gonna need some tax returns, but not just the tax returns. On your tax returns, you need to show a decent amount of money that you make. Now, if you're an employee, that's fine. You're not gonna be able to, to change much unless you ask for a raise. But if you're a business owner, like I am, and the way that I had this conversation with the lender, he told me, look, how much money have you declared, 2 years ago? This amount. How much money have you declared last year? Okay, perfect. So in order for you to qualify for a house like this, from an amount from this to this, I'm gonna need you to show this year, this amount, right? This is how important it is to have your relationship with the lender really, really tight, because he can give you advice that you can build on, for the years to come. Like you'll know, okay, this year I need to show this amount. This year I'm gonna need this amount to show on my taxes. Therefore, if you plan to get more than one house, and then on top of that, of course, we'll talk in future videos, the amount that you're making on a monthly basis from your rental property also adds up to your debt to income ratio. So that's really good to know, right? But again, you have to talk to your lender prior to you even making a decision to buy your first rental property. Now, the second step of this process of talking to your lender is to get pre-approved, right? Most of the realtors will not lose their time just showing you a bunch of houses if you don't have a pre-approval letter, because again, we have to understand, a realtor has to take you by the hand and meet you at a bunch of different open houses and show you different places from their portfolio, and they have to spend time, they have to go over there with you and show you the house and explain all these things. And it's mileage, it's their time, it's gas money, and a lot of different things. So they're not gonna spend time with you if you don't have a pre-approval letter. Now, the pre-approval essentially, it doesn't hit your score. It's not like a hard inquiry on your credit score. Most of the times, they don't even hit it if you come in prepared. So what does it mean to be prepared? You have your tax returns ready to go, printed or as a PDF. And then you have a report from creditkarma.com where it shows what's your credit score. And then you can also explain to your lender, this is what I want to do. This is what my debt to income ratio is, or these are my tax returns for the last 2 years. This is how much I made. This is my credit score. I want to start making offers for a house like this, right? And then he's going to give you a pre-approval letter, which then you can take to a realtor and then start price shopping, and then, share your thoughts with the realtor for him or her to understand exactly what are your goals and what you're trying to do. And that takes us to step number 5, talk to an agent. So, I would advise at first, if you don't know anybody, which is hard to believe, I guarantee that you have a friend that has used a realtor at some point in time, right? Now, if you don't, just post on your Facebook wall who's recommended somebody in your local area. Or in the area that you're trying to get the rental property. Now, this may be a little bit different if you plan to get an FHA loan and you plan to live in one of the units yourself. and then use the other unit as a rental property. There are a couple or if you get a 3-unit or a 4-unit, whatever. If you plan to live in there, it's probably different, and it's probably gonna take you a little bit more time to find a place that really fits the criteria that you're trying to go after. But what's really important is find a realtor that's really active in the local community, because that person, it's usually like really tied up to all the local places, right? Like they know exactly what's nearby. They know what are the best deals. Like they know, instead of just someone that works, I don't know, like across the entire state. Of course, it all depends where you live, but it's important to work with someone. Think about your realtor as a long-term partner. Now, of course, you have to, vibe together. You have to feel good about that person. And again, the realtor that I used the first time, I'm using pretty much for every transaction. So I've done so far 3 transactions, and I wouldn't go with anybody else just because that person gained my trust. So now if I need something, I'm gonna go to her every single time, right? So in this step, you just have to talk to a realtor or maybe interview a couple of them and then see and explain them what you want to search for. And ideally, if you want to get, a 2, 3, or 4-unit place, talk to somebody that does that for a living, or at least that does multifamily properties, I would say 80 to 90% of their portfolio. Because if you talk to somebody that only does single family properties, the game is different when we talk about multifamily. So it's really important to talk to somebody that it's already doing what you're trying to accomplish, or at least it's already working with people that try to accomplish what you try to accomplish. Step number 6, house shopping or price shopping, right? So now is the time to go with your realtor, go with the agent, and start seeing a bunch of different places. Now, you have to take in consideration, like a lot of times when I look for a place now, I try to look for, 2, 3, 4-unit places that I can actually bring value into that neighborhood. What do I mean by that? I'm looking for cosmetic renovation that I can do to the house. Like I'm not looking to make, changes to the foundation. I'm not trying to demolish places and build from scratch or whatever. No, I'm only looking for places that I can actually remodel only from a cosmetic standpoint. Like everything that's inside, like, the color, fixing the bathroom, the kitchens, and all those things that are really important to be able to bring the value of that house up. Now, how do you do that? It's very important to know what's your budget, right? Again, a lot of people talk about this concept of like starting in real estate with no money down. Well, for this process, you're gonna need some money aside from your closing costs, aside from the down payment, if that's what you're trying to do. If you're like really, really short on budget, another thing that you can do, like the house, if you're going for an FHA loan, the house cannot be in a bad situation. Like you cannot have walls, or it cannot be just in construction mode or whatever, because your loan is not gonna get approved, right? It has to be like, if it's just cosmetic work involved, that's totally fine. However, when you go price shopping, you need to make sure that the pre-approval letter, like the amount that you get the pre-approval letter for, kind of matches the price point. And a lot of times you're gonna have to kind of go back and forth a little bit with placing an offer. And sometimes you have to, raise the bar. Sometimes you have to push a little bit and do a lot of different things. But we'll talk about different tricks in a different video. But the most important thing is the pre-approval price point, right? What's on the letter has to be like, when you do price shopping, there's no point to see houses that are like $100,000 more than what you get pre-approved for, because you're not gonna be able to negotiate that amount down, right? So keep that in mind. You don't want to lose your time. You don't want to lose the realtor time. It's very important to keep things in place. And when you go, price shopping, when you see something that you like, and most likely the first house that you're gonna see, you're gonna want to put an offer down. I would advise against it. Give it at least 24 hours after you see at least 5 houses. Now, if the 3rd or 4th house that you see, because you'll start to see a trend. You see the first, you want to put an offer down. You see the second one, you also want to put an offer down, but then you compare to the first one. And every house that you see, you're going to compare to the first, the second, and it's keep going this route until you find one that actually fits the criteria that you want to accomplish. Now, if you plan to rent just regularly and you want to get regular tenants in there, it's one thing. The way that I did it, I rented for Airbnb. So that one is different. You have to really look at the location in a smart way ahead of time. Like you cannot be, if you're planning to, if you have a lot of time on your plate and you plan to do the work yourself, and maybe your wife or your husband, or maybe you want to involve some members of the family, whatever, and you have time, you can have a full-time job having 2-3 units to manage yourself, doing the cleaning, doing a bunch of different things. And then you can make a lot more money renting it on Airbnb and VRBO. Now, if you don't have a lot of time and you just try to go more on the passive side of things, you can go with regular tenants, right? Like just a 1-year lease, or even if it's month to month, whatever. But this decision plays a big role into this whole process, because short-term rental versus regular rental, it's a big difference. And you can really screw things up if you buy a place in a location that it's not close to like tourist area. You're gonna keep the house empty. Like you're not gonna have people going in as tenants if you plan for Airbnb. So it's really important to make a plan beforehand and stick to it. Step number 7, now you have to draft an offer. Now, of course, it's not going to be you that are doing it, it's going to be the agent, but always learn to ask different questions. Now, a lot of times the seller agent will say that there are like so many offers on this place, but at the end of the day, you're not able to actually know how many offers are on that house. But what you can see is you can see how many people have been there during the open house. Now with COVID, it's a little bit different. You probably have to go just individually. But other than that, it's impossible for you to know if what the seller agent is telling you, or it's what the seller agent is telling your agent, that, how many offers have been put on this house and all these other different things, right? But you want to be straight up with your agent and tell her or him, hey, this is what I'm willing to do. This is the amount that I can afford the most. You need to be able to make an inspection for the house, and you put that as a contingency, and all the other things that your agent will actually make you familiar with. But don't be afraid to ask questions, but you want to move fast when it comes to an offer. Like I know I mentioned, hey, make sure you don't rush when it comes to the first house that you see, but after you see at least 5, and then you see one that fits your criteria, make sure you draft an offer as soon as possible, because good properties don't last too much. Step number 8, closing costs. So, a lot of people don't take into consideration that, you have to put a down payment, but that the closing cost is also involved. Usually it's about 1% of the actual sell price. So you have to factor for that in as well, and always have some money aside. So if you plan to put only 3.5% down, right? And let's assume that's, I don't know, if the house is 100K, 3.5, it's only 3,500. However, you're probably gonna have to put another 1,500, 1,000 to 1,500 as closing cost. And there, a couple other expenses may come in the way. So make sure you have an extra $5,000 to $10,000 as a cushion, just in case things don't go the way you expected. It's always good to factor those closing costs into the process, so you don't get hit right with a surprise at the end of it, when it's like you're right there and you're hoping to close on the house and get your rental property and start making moves and actually do the renovation on it and things like that. And you don't want to get hit with any of these surprises for just a couple extra $1,000. Step number 9, renovation. So I cannot stress this enough. It's really hard to find contractors that can do a good job and do it on time. So again, timing is one of the most important things when it comes to this, because you're paying out of pocket for the mortgage. So the faster you can remodel all of the units, then you can start renting them out, right? Now, ideally, you want to rent them out all at the same time, or if you plan to do Airbnb or VRBO, short-term rental, it's pretty much the same thing. However, you want at least to have, 1 or 2 down, that if you are in a stressful situation and you need to move in, then you at least can move in into one of them. However, if you don't know anybody that's a contractor and it's a really good contractor, you're gonna have to use sites like Thumbtack.com, HomeAdvisor, Yelp, and even Google. You can just Google contractors and then get multiple quotes. I would say get at least 3 to 5 different estimates or quotes for the renovation that you want to make on this property. A little trick that we use is every single time when we do a property and we remodel it, We use the same colors on all of them. We have this combination of gray and white, and it looks really slick. I'm gonna put some before and after pictures so you can see, but we use that color code every single time. Therefore, I don't have to stress too much and pick a color and try to match with whatever. No, because it's a rental and it's a short-term rental with the process that we use the same color code every single time. So, depending on the location that you plan to get the house, because every house and every neighborhood and every state is different. So if you want to go with a trend and if you want to go a little fancy, you can, but at the end of the day, it's a rental. So you need to make sure that you don't, spend a fortune just to remodel these things, because at the end of the day, you want to rent them out quickly. And the fancier it is, the harder and longer it's going to take to get it done. So make sure you get a contractor and you get multiple quotes using the sites that I mentioned. Or you can also start asking friends or even ask your realtor if they know any contractor that they referred to other people, because usually word of mouth, it's one of the most powerful referral sources for every industry out there. And last but not least, step 10, take professional photos, like actually hire a photographer that knows what he's doing, and then rent the place. Now, I cannot stress this enough. I remember when we did the first Airbnb unit, the moment we posted, so it only cost us about $100 to get a photographer from Thumbtack actually, and even to this day, I'm still using the guy, so he does a great job. And the moment we posted the pictures on Airbnb, and this doesn't matter if it's short-term rental or long-term rental, it kind of plays the same way. The reason for that is you don't want people to think, if you're just taking a few photos with your iPhone, it's gonna drag the quality of, let's say you invested a lot of money into remodeling this place, and then you start taking photos with your iPhone and you don't know what you're doing, you're not gonna be able to position the photos in a way that actually the photos can actually bring the quality of the way that the house looks like way, way higher than if you just do it yourself, on a crappy photo. So I would highly suggest you take a photographer, and you can use the same sites. You can use Thumbtack, Yelp, Google, Home Advisor, doesn't matter, and actually get some quote. You shouldn't pay more than $100 to $200, depending how many units you've had. Like if you have 4 units, maybe you end up paying anywhere from $100 to $150 per unit if you have 2-3 bedrooms each. But essentially, you shouldn't pay more than $100 to $150 per unit. So really important, take professional photos, because it's gonna play a big role into you being able to charge more if it's long-term rental, or if it's short-term rental, the same thing, just putting more money on that daily or weekly rate. All right, guys, so if you like this video, you're gonna love the next one coming up on the screen, what I show you how I actually started my short-term business step by step and how I was able to make $70,000 in the first year of owning this place. So don't go anywhere and watch the next video. I think you'll enjoy it.